You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and there's a lot to get to today. A lot of NFL news, so no trifecta. I'll also talk about the Olympics, and after that, you will get the interview that I did with Yaron Weitzman. But I just want to touch on Jordan Jenkins, because I went pretty in-depth on him yesterday. So, just really briefly, I'll touch on the contract, and then I'll move on. Love the deal for the Jets. Great move. 1 year, $5 million. He's definitely worth it. I thought he was going to get a lot more than that from the Jets. He had certainly earned that. But if Douglas wanted to sign him to a prove-it deal, I don't mind that. I don't mind the idea of prove-it deals. It gives the players added incentive to keep their high play up. There are a lot of players who, when they get their big boy contract, their play just falls off overnight. They lose that motivation. It's what happened with Trumaine Johnson. The one thing I'll say is there's a downside to all these prove-it deals that the Jets are signing, and that is there's no roster stability. And what I mean by that is the Jets are going to do this dance all over again next year. They're going to have to bring back Brian Poole again. They're going to have to bring back Jordan Jenkins again. And when you add that on to all the other players that are going to be free agents next year, I don't know who those guys are, but I guarantee you they've got at least one or two that are pretty good. Just on the law of averages. That's not good. I'd like the Jets to be a little more willing to invest some term into these guys. Jenkins has earned it. Poole has earned it. You want to tell me George Fant hasn't earned it? Okay, fine. I can accept that. This may be the reason why Anderson and Clowney haven't signed with the Jets yet. I mean, I know that the Jets are waiting for Clowney's price to drop, so that's not a huge factor, but it's certainly part of it. And Robbie Anderson, just sign him long term. Alright, he's earned it. He's the best pass catcher the Jets have. Darnold needs him. Make solid multi-year commitments to these guys. And let's actually go for this thing. This gives me hope for the Jets' future. I'm still a little skeptical, but with this signing, they're on the right track. Okay, on to Travis Frederick retiring. And you cannot overstate the impact of this on the Cowboys. This is devastating for them. This really, really hurts them. Travis Frederick was one of the best centers in the league for a long time. He was the anchor behind those great Cowboys offensive lines with Tyron Smith, La'el Collins, Ronald Leary, and Zach Martin, and someone else who I'm forgetting. But now you've lost Frederick. And now, in addition to a glaring hole at left guard, you've got to add center to that too. Now, the Cowboys have been able to fill those holes in the draft, and it's something that the Colts have done very well. I think they've provided a pretty good blueprint for how you should build an offensive line. Goes back to the Jets, offensive line continuity being very important. I mean, we all knew that Douglas was going to tear down the offensive line and build it back up. You can't do the whole thing through the draft, but you should be able to replace one old offensive lineman with a young one through the draft. Year after year after year, if you need to. That's the correct way to build an offensive line. Even though the Cowboys have had luck building an offensive line through the draft, you're not going to be able to replace Frederick. You're just not. Will you be able to find a good center? Yeah. No question. But not at the caliber of Frederick. This is a guy who, before he had Guillain-Barré, was on a Hall of Fame trajectory. Like I said before, the anchor of some of the best offensive lines in recent football history. That may seem like a stretch, but when you watch those guys play, they reminded you of the old Hogs line for the Redskins with Joe Jacoby. They just did. It's going to be interesting to see how the Cowboys fill their holes on the offensive line. Maybe they don't even think they have a hole at left guard. Maybe they still have faith in Connor Williams. He really hasn't been that good since coming into the league, but you still get the sense that there's something there. He still has potential, and he's trending in the right direction. He didn't have a good rookie year. His sophomore year, he was better. Still wasn't that good, but I don't know if I'm ready to cast him off as a bust yet. He's certainly trending in that direction, but I'm not ready to give up on him yet. Center, though, that's going to be the big one. And it's going to be fascinating to see what the Cowboys do next month. Moving on now to Cam Newton being released. And this is something that we all knew was going to happen. If he wasn't going to be traded, he was going to be released. And it's a really sad ending to the career of probably the best quarterback in Panthers history. You don't need me to tell you how great Cam Newton was in his prime. Led the Panthers to a 15-1 record, for goodness sake, and they nearly won the Super Bowl. But then he got hurt. And it's a cruel business. The NFL is a cruel business. When you get hurt, especially a quarterback, that's it. The team is going to look for a replacement. And the Panthers found a cheaper one in Bridgewater. They found a younger one in Bridgewater. And like I said on Friday, I'm really excited to see what he can do in Matt Rule's offense. I have no idea where Newton's going to go now that he's a free agent. Him and Jameis Winston are really fascinating to me. Where are they going to sign? They're both capable of starting in the NFL. They're not world beaters anymore, but they're capable starters. But there are no teams out there that need starters. The Chargers? You want to tell me the LA Chargers need a starting quarterback? I think they're comfortable going into the season with Justin Herbert and Tyrod Taylor. Patriots? Cam Newton on the Patriots? I could see that. Winston, no. Newton, probably. Newton would make sense for the Patriots. Boy, that is weird to talk about the Patriots needing a quarterback. Oh, man. Oh, it's still great. It's still great. The Jaguars are rolling with Minshew. maybe it makes sense to bring Newton or Winston in as a backup in case Minshew regresses. It's certainly possible. He's not a guarantee. Redskins to push Haskins? That makes no sense. I think the most likely landing spot for Newton is the Patriots, and for Winston, the Jaguars, as a backup slash guy who's going to push Minshew for the starting job, although Minshew will have the edge. Speaking of the Panthers, they actually did a lot yesterday, and they started off by signing Tahir Whitehead to a 1-year deal worth $2.5 million. That's a pretty good replacement for Kuechly. Whitehead has talent. Now, he's not great, and he didn't have a great year last year or the year before. But this is a guy who has produced at a high level before. At the very least, he'll be a competent replacement for Kuechly. You're not going to be able to find a linebacker like Kuechly, and that's who Whitehead will ultimately be compared to. But Whitehead will be able to hold his own. He's not a bad player by any stretch. He's just not good in coverage. That's the biggest knock on Whitehead. He's at his best when he's just going for the ball carrier, not dropping back in coverage. He'd be a terrible Jet, because Greg Williams with that Tampa 2 likes to drop his linebackers back in coverage. Frickin' Neville Hewitt getting burned for 30-yard passes. And James Burgess, too. I don't know why the Jets brought him back. Stupid moves. But back to Whitehead. Good move by the Panthers. The contract is very fair for him. You just have to use him correctly. And don't compare him to Luke Kuechly. He won't be that. That's not fair to him. He'll be a solid replacement. No complaints with Whitehead whatsoever. The second move that the Panthers made was trading Kyle Allen to the Redskins, put him back with Ron Rivera for a 5th-round pick. And I gotta say, that's an even trade. The Redskins needed a backup, and Allen will be a fine backup for Dwayne Haskins. I still like Haskins. There's still talent there. It is unfair to cast the guy off after one bad year, especially since it was his rookie year, and he was the 15th overall pick. How are you going to say that this guy's a bust already? You want to tell me he didn't do as well as you thought he would? I'm with you there. Going into last year, I thought Haskins was the best quarterback in the draft. I had him ahead of Kyler Murray. You want to tell me this is a make-or-break year for Haskins? Alright, you can say that. He certainly needs to have a better year than last year, no question. But Ron Rivera wouldn't have taken the Redskins' job if he didn't think Haskins could be something. And I think that the Allen trade will give Haskins some added motivation to really put his nose to the grindstone and be the quarterback that I thought he could have been coming out of OSU. He's not going to be handed the starting job. He's going to have to earn it. And he's going to have to earn it every week. I will say this, though. I have seen rumors that the Redskins could take Tua 2nd overall. Are you insane? You really think the Redskins are going to pass on Chase Young for Tua when they took Dwayne Haskins last year? Forget how you think Haskins is going to do. You have Chase Young sitting there. Young is right up there with the Bosas in terms of overall grade. In fact, I have Young number 1 on my big board. I'll go a little more in depth on him when I do the trifecta, but to pass on Chase Young for Tua would be criminal for the Redskins. Give Haskins another year. Let him develop some more chemistry with McLaurin. They clearly have something since they both went to OSU. They both played together. And let's see if Chase Young can help elevate the Redskins' defense. Don't take Tua. That's ridiculous. Speaking of the Redskins, they did make an incredibly stupid trade. I mean, I don't know what Rivera's thinking with this one. Giving Quinton Dunbar away to the Seahawks for a 5th round pick? That's ridiculous. According to Pro Football Focus, Dunbar was the 2nd best corner in the league, behind only Richard Sherman. Now, look, is Quinton Dunbar the 2nd best corner in the league? No. But he had a great year last year. Alright, if you watched him play, you saw it. And I thought he made sense for the Jets. I just didn't bring it up because I knew the Jets weren't going to do it. That's not the Jets' MO. They just don't make those type of trades. I've seen some speculation that they could trade for Trent Williams. I don't think they're trading for Trent Williams. It didn't make sense. But I don't think it's going to happen. But going back to the Dunbar trade, look at the Redskins secondary now. It's Kendall Fuller and blank. The Redskins are probably going to take 2 corners in the draft. Maybe Chase Young doesn't make as much sense for him as a guy like Jeff Okudah. I mean, my God. And look, I wasn't going to bring this up, but it really goes with what I'm talking about. The Redskins also cut Monte Nicholson, Kayvon Webster, Cody Sensabaugh, Dee Delaney, and Breon Borders. Every single defensive back that the Redskins had last year, gone! What on earth is Rivera doing? Look, they have some good safeties in Landon Collins and Troy Apke. And Fuller certainly can bounce back. There's no question. But you've got to be skeptical about these moves. Rivera is a defensive genius. There's no question. But he's really putting himself behind the 8 ball here. He's banking on his scheme lifting up these players. Talent wins over scheme in the NFL. I'm skeptical about the Redskins' defense. Chase Young will help, but he can only do so much. I think their offense will be okay, but their defense is going to be below average, I think. Speaking of cornerbacks, I do want to talk about the Ravens bringing back Jimmy Smith for 1 year at $3.5 million. It's a great move for the Ravens. Smith was a really good player for them last year, and he's been really good for them his whole career. I mean, I remember when he was taken. It was weird. The Ravens wanted to take him at 26, but then they were working on a trade, and they had to pass because they couldn't get the trade done in time. Then the Bears got on the clock, and the Ravens had to trade up to 27 to take Smith. It was weird. Very, very weird. But Smith has made that decision look smart. 65.6 overall grade last year, according to Pro Football Focus. I actually thought he made some sense for the Jets. Before they signed Desir, I thought they could have signed Smith. I think Smith is better than Desir, but whatever. Good move for the Ravens in bringing him back. He strikes me as the kind of guy who's going to spend his whole career with the Ravens. And that's always good to see. The last piece of NFL news that I want to talk about is really minor. I won't spend too much time on it, but I want to talk about it because he was a former Jet, and that is the Broncos bringing back Jeremiah Atauchu for 1 year at $1.5 million. He's a good backup to have. You can put him in sub packages and he'll hold his own. I remember him with the Jets. He didn't play a lot, but when he did, he actually looked pretty good. Last year for the Broncos, he wasn't great, but he was good in run defense, good tackler. So, I don't mind the Broncos bringing him back, $1.5 million. Perfectly fine with that. No complaints whatsoever. Okay. On to the Olympics being postponed until 2021. This was something that had to be done. When you have every other major sporting event being postponed or canceled, the Olympics are not immune to that. And when you have entire countries like Canada and Australia saying, we won't send our athletes to Tokyo unless the games are postponed, the Olympics have no choice but to act. It's the right decision. There's no question about it. It certainly creates some logistical challenges, but the IOC will push through it. They're one of the most powerful organizations in all of sports. I mean, only the Olympics can push for these cities to build new state-of-the-art arenas. And then, when the Olympics are over, that's it. They just stand there abandoned for only tourists to gawk at. I do just want to say one thing. There are some people that are concerned that since the games were scheduled for late July, that this means that we're going to have to wait until like August or September for sports to pick back up again. That's not what this is. The reason why the Olympics are being postponed primarily is because the athletes have no place to train. It's impossible to practice while you're practicing social distancing, which I encourage everyone to do. I've said that before. There was a great video that I saw. It showed a bunch of matches in a row, and all the matches get set on fire. But then there's this one match that steps out of a line, and that match doesn't get set on fire, and none of the matches behind it get set on fire. That's social distancing. So, please, stay indoors. Stay safe. These athletes can't do that while they're practicing. Pushing it back a year was the only option. Now, certainly it screws over NBC a little bit, and all the other networks in all the other countries that were airing this, but they'll figure out a way around it. Certainly the lodging gets more difficult, but like I said, they'll figure it out. They have over a year to figure it out. It'll be fine. We can wait 5 years for the Summer Olympics. I really have no problem with this decision. I don't think anyone can have a problem with it. And as it stands right now, we're looking at a mid to late May return for sports. That can change, though. Please do not hold me to that. Alright, here's my interview with Yaron Weitzman. You're listening to the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I'm fortunate enough to be joined by Yaron Weitzman, the author of Tanking to the Top, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the most audacious process in the history of sports. Yaron, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
No, my pleasure. So, how did Sam Hinkie first get to the 76ers?
How did Sam Hinkie first get to the 76ers? I have about 100 pages on that. No, but I'll distill it down. In 2011, the Sixers were bought by a group of private equity guys. I should know the price off the top of my head. I believe it was $250 million. I hope I have that right. If not, I apologize. Yeah, right. But it kind of is, though, right? Especially for an NBA team. The team was. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when you look at what the Clippers were bought for at $2 billion, $250 million really is kind of pocket change. You're not wrong.
Exactly. So they do that. They realize the team is kind of stuck in mediocrity, right? They're in the middle. They're not championship contender. They're not getting any top draft picks. They kind of, through a number of reasons, but they basically decide that they want to tear the whole thing down and build it back up. Sort of a private equity model, which they were familiar with. And they interviewed Sam Hinkie, who they had interviewed, I believe it was the year before, for their GM vacancy. He came in, showed them how he was an assistant GM in Houston Rockets, illustrated how he had sort of helped Daryl Morey, the Rockets president, GM, acquire the assets necessary to get a James Harden, a star, the type of player you needed to win a championship. He laid out what he thought he could do for the Sixers, how he would get them to the top, and the owners liked what they heard, and hired him.
All right, sounds good. So, why did Hinkie hire Brett Brown?
He knew he needed so Brett Brown was a player development specialist. That's one. Two is Brett Brown was known as a relentlessly optimistic person. So you take two things. If you're a team rebuilding, one of the two things you need, you're going to have a lot of losses. You need somebody who can stay optimistic. And the whole point is to develop players, right? You're not trying to win, or you're trying to win games, or maybe not. But the goal is for your players to get better so that when you do have a team that's ready to compete, some of these other guys you bring in, second-round picks, first-round picks, whatever it is, undrafted guys, when you're ready to compete, some of those guys are evolve and develop into rotation players ready to help you play at the highest level. And that was, Sam, I quote somebody in my book of Sam telling them, Brett's the perfect guy to get us through this first phase of the rebuild.
All right, that makes sense. So what can you tell us about the 2013 NBA draft where Hinkie traded Jrue Holiday for Nerlens Noel and drafted Michael Carter-Williams?
That kind of symbolized to everyone, right, what was going on. Jrue Holiday, he was an all-star. It's crazy, right? Like, you think about the rebuild, Jrue Holiday, how long ago Sam Hinkie was taking over, and Jrue Holiday now is still in the league and it's still really good, right? So he was about, 24 at the time, but Hinkie basically decided that, Holiday was already on a contract. I forget the amount, but a pretty big contract, and Hinkie basically decided that we are not going to win a championship with Jrue Holiday. Our timeline will not match up to Jrue Holiday, so we're better off trading him now and trying to reset and get some draft picks. So they get Nerlens Noel. They get Michael Carter-Williams. The pick kind of symbolized to the rest of the Sixers players, this is going to be different, right? Like, they were all texting each other. Jason Richardson, was a veteran on the team, remember that night, was watching the draft and texting his manager that night, being like, what is going on here? The other thing to know about that draft is that Hinkie it was him and one of his deputies, and he kept a lot of his scouts in the dark about the Jrue Holiday thing. They did not know. He came in, and this was his decision, and, a lot of the scouts probably would not have agreed, and they did not know what was really happening until the last minute.
Wow, okay. That was really when the process started, because I remember watching that draft, and everyone thought that the Sixers were the ones that were going to end up trading a first-round pick to get better in that draft, and then they end up getting a first-round pick, and they trade Jrue Holiday. It really caught a lot of people off guard.
Yes, no, for sure, people were very surprised. I guess if you were studying Hinkie, you couldn't know it was a thing, it was coming, but no, that definitely surprised a lot of people, including Jrue Holiday himself.
Talking to Yaron Weitzman, the author of Tanking to the Top, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Most Audacious Process in the History of Sports. So, your book contains a never-before-shared email about Joel Embiid before anyone had ever heard of him. What exactly was in the email?
It was Joel Embiid's uncle. I'm trying to remember. It was Joel Embiid's uncle sending an email to a longtime, I guess he was this guy named Joe Tomu, who was a former player, NBA scout. I guess he was still a scout at the time. Basically saying Joel's uncle took a picture of Joel standing in front of a doorpost to show how tall he was, right? The contrast, you could see how tall he is via picture. And saying, this is my nephew, this is how tall he is, he plays basketball, can you help him? Do you think there's a future? And that's what sort of set off the whole path of Joel becoming an NBA star.
And hey, it's worked out for him. The thing about Embiid is he was drafted out of Kansas. He was supposed to go first overall to the Cavaliers. He got hurt a week before the draft, and then he ends up, for lack of a better word, slipping to the Sixers. I don't know how much of a slip it was. I mean, he only fell 2 spots to the Sixers at 3, but it worked out. Embiid has had a really, really good career so far.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I cannot argue with anything you just said. Yeah, it worked out for him. It does present one of those great NBA what ifs. So that was the summer the Cavaliers took Andrew Wiggins and ended up packaging him to the Timberwolves for Kevin Love, sort of at the behest of LeBron, right? It would have been fascinating to see if they had Embiid, whether they would have kept him, whether they would have made the trade anyway. Just all the butterfly effects from that would have been really interesting.
Right, exactly. Joel Embiid and Karl Anthony Towns playing together. That doesn't sound so good. I don't know if that would have worked. I don't think those guys can play together.
Yeah, maybe, or maybe he stays in Cleveland. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. So why did Hinkie trade Michael Carter-Williams a year and a half after drafting him?
I think he recognized that which you can't argue with the evaluation. He recognized that a lot of his numbers were empty. Just the idea that somebody has to put up numbers on a bad team and the ball was in his hands a lot. They didn't think he had made enough progress shooting. They didn't think they thought that was the highest his value would get, and they turned out to be right. Which was, that's the stuff Hinkie was really good at, is the idea of determining value or being, properly self-assessing, I guess, his own players, right? He wasn't, some teams get tied to a guy because they draft him, and he's rookie of the year, he just sell tickets around him. That was not something Hinkie was worried about.
Yeah, I remember when he was traded, I was driving to college and the news came across the radio and it's like, wait a minute, you just drafted this guy a year and a half after you drafted him, and he won Rookie of the Year. He looked like he was going to be a decent player. I mean, granted, it worked out because Michael Carter-Williams has had a good, not great career, but it really caught me by surprise. There's no question about that.
You and everyone else, including Michael Carter-Williams and some people in the Sixers front office, business people, I think.
All right, so why did Hinkie draft Jahlil Okafor when he already had a center in Embiid?
We had 2 actually, right? He had Nerlens Noel also.
Right, yeah.
So he wasn't worried that short.
Although Noel was more of a power forward at Kentucky.
Yeah, maybe another big, but he wasn't worried about fit. It wasn't like that was a short-term thing. He would tell people if we got, and I don't know if I necessarily agree, but his thing was, we have 3 centers. If they turn out to be Hakeem Olajuwon, Ben Wallace, and Tim Duncan, we'll deal with that problem.
Right.
Again, I think if you put those 3 guys, Hakeem, Duncan, and Ben Wallace on the same team, maybe they don't become Hakeem Wallace and Ben Duncan and Tim Duncan. But it was just, they wanted D'Angelo Russell. He ended up going number 2. Okafor, they had concerns about Porzingis. Okafor was the highest rated player left in the draft. I don't think they loved him, but they figured sort of like, they think about Michael Carter-Williams, right? They had drafted him. He played really well. They traded him for something better. They figured the best move, the best value they can do, the best value play they can make was to draft Okafor and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, look, it makes sense from a value perspective if you're going to take Okafor with the intent of trading him. But this was my whole thing with the process. And I don't like tanking. I really don't advocate for it. I understand sometimes it makes sense. But here was my whole thing with the process. It seemed like it never had an end to it. Like, when was Hinkie ever going to say, okay, now we're going to go for this thing, as opposed to just kicking the can down the road?
No, it's a fair, it's a criticism and a fair one. His answer would be, his reply would be, that's not the right way to think about it. Like, arbitrary timelines are how you get into trouble. The answer, when you're ready, you're ready. So the idea, and again, you might not agree, I think there's probably a middle ground there. So to say 3 years no matter what will be good, that's how you run into issues. We're kind of seeing out the Atlanta Hawks a little bit right now. They have a rebuilding, then they decide they want to be good right away, and now they're kind of giving up some assets, trying to rush the thing, and it might end up costing them. His thing was, when we, who knows, right? Maybe if Embiid is healthy the first year, I knew he wouldn't be, but if player X is healthy or whatever, maybe they'd be ready earlier. The idea is when you're ready, and then you make the proper moves. Until then, arbitrary timelines are when you get into trouble. To me, I would say the bigger criticism more. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's pretty smart, right? Like the path to the sunk cost. I think it's more, he positioned it a lot with the draft, and the draft is a crapshoot, and therefore I'm going to miss picks. That's why I need so many picks, and if we miss one, that's what happens. And I think that might have been that'd be the area more where I would take issue with, where there is somewhat of a skill with the draft, and you can't just say it's okay if we miss picks because people do. You have to hit a higher number on your lottery picks, I think.
Oh, no question about that. That's the goal of tanking. You get a high pick and you find the players that are going to lead your team for the next 15 or 20 years. The fact that Henke was okay with sort of, for lack of a better word, poo-pooing draft picks, if we miss one, we miss one, that's just proof that this guy was never really cut out to be a GM.
Yeah, well, yes. So say it again. So you're saying that you don't think he was cut out to be a GM?
To be honest with you, I was not a Henke fan. I never was. I don't think he was cut out to be a GM. No, I don't. I think there was a different way to go about it. I think that the core of Jrue Holiday, Thaddeus Young, and Evan Turner was not a great team by any stretch. And they probably wouldn't have won an NBA title. But if they had gotten some other pieces around them, if they had drafted well, signed guys in free agency, maybe they could have been a perennial playoff team for a while.
No, they drafted, it's funny, the group that came before Henke had a really good draft record. Lou Williams was another one of those guys. You mentioned Jrue Holiday. Vucevic. There's definitely a sliding doors situation where you can say, if they just stuck the course and made a couple tweaks here and there, maybe things are different. I don't know if I fully agree. To me, I think the plan worked. I would make tweaks along the edges in terms of how you deal with the other agents and other teams and some of that stuff. And if you want to argue that that's where Henke is lacking and why he's not qualified, you could argue that. I would push back a little bit. I think if he had some different people around him, which was on him, and I think if he got another chance, he actually probably did learn from some of his mistakes. But the short answer is they lost for a couple of years, and now they're a perennial contender. And maybe they're not going to win a championship this year, but they're really good, and their team matters, and they have two big stars, and they're an important team in the NBA, and that's because of his plan. I'm
with you there. In a roundabout way, it worked. It's just, the simple fact is he's not there to see it, and now, good luck getting another opportunity in the NBA. I don't see how he's going to get another job anytime soon. He's not with the Denver Broncos, for goodness sake.
I don't know if I think that was a random consulting thing. I don't think he's with him full time. Listen, not everyone would hire him. He also wouldn't work for everybody, right? There's like a Venn diagram of teams he'd be willing to work for, and teams would hire him, and that probably leaves us in a number where it's unlikely he comes back into the NBA. I hear you. There are a lot of people who would agree with you. I wouldn't necessarily, and again, I don't. If you read the book, you'll see.
I read it.
Yeah, not you. I'm saying anyone who reads the book. They'll see that. Right. I'm not. Yeah, go ahead.
You did a very good job of explaining this. You did a good job of advocating your position. You're a smart guy. I've read you on Bleacher Report a bunch. I respect your opinion immensely. I want you to know that.
No, I was going to say, if you read it, you'll see also that you, the royal you, will see that I'm not, the book is far from an apology for Henke also, right? It's not like, the book's not about how brilliant Sam Hinkie changed the NBA. So I'm plenty, I point out some of the areas where there are mistakes. But I think overall, if I'm saying yes, no, would I take him? If black or white, I would say yes.
Talking to Yaron Weitzman, the author of Tanking to the Top, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Most Audacious Process in the History of Sports. So, how was Henke viewed by other people in the league?
He is not popular among many. There's a minority who think he was crucified. I guess I can use that word. And people think he represented something bigger. The stats, there's this, called the analytics group, which I think sometimes the league gets, I think the outside paints it. It's not always like there's an analytics group and a non-analytics group in the NBA, and they're always warring. That's usually an oversimplification. That said, there are different factions in the league, and that analytics-based faction, appreciates and likes Cam more. But there's also, even among them, there are people who just were frustrated a little bit with the way he acted, whether it was giving, I think one GM told me that guy threw out the word sweeping offers always, stuff like that, the way he tried to win every deal, crush opponents on every deal. Some agents weren't fans of the way he operated. It was, he was not so popular in the NBA, that's fair to say.
I remember a trade that he made with the Brooklyn Nets. It was a really, really minor trade, but this was after, I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan. This was after the Nets traded all those picks for Pierce and Garnett. The Nets traded Marquise Teague to the Sixers for Casper Ware, and the Nets also gave up a second-round pick in the deal. And it's like, why on earth would the Nets give up a second-round pick for this guy who I don't even think he played a game for the Nets? The fact that Hinkie was able to finesse these GMs, he was a pit bull when it came to trades. There's no question about that.
Yep, and it paid off a lot, right? He would get these picks, right? So there's always, it's good, but there are times when you just need to say, you know what, I'm going to take not even the L. I just won't force the blowout. I'll still have a win. I don't need to, force the blowout win on this one, right? And sometimes it's worth it.
All right, so what was the final straw that ultimately led to Hinkie being fired?
It was probably the Jahlil Okafor saga, right? Playing out when he had, the TMZ video of him drunk and yelling at Boston fans and that kind of, all these different winds swirling around. Hinkie, like I mentioned, some of the opposing agents, a lot of agents didn't like him, opposing teams. His opposing owners didn't like the drain the Sixers were taking on the league. The league office wasn't happy with how blatant the tanking was. They thought this was hurting the bottom line. That was bad for business. Some of Hinkie's colleagues, on the business side of things, weren't happy with how it's hard to market and sell a 10-win team. The Okafor thing just was the final straw in terms of the league for Josh Harris, and the league being happy to help Josh Harris find a replacement or someone to work on top of him. In terms of, in this case, that was just Jerry Colangelo.
Yeah, and Colangelo obviously brought in his son Brian to lead the team for a little bit. The biggest trade that Brian Colangelo made with the Sixers was trading up 2 spots to get Markelle Fultz, the consensus top pick in the 2017 draft. Obviously, he didn't work out in Philly. It seems like he's carved out a nice niche for himself in Orlando. But why didn't Fultz succeed in Philly?
That's a great question, right? I don't know if we have the answer to that. I think there was a lot going on. It's tough, Markelle Fultz was someone who became when he was 15, he was still playing JV. So he wasn't somebody who was born into stardom. The whole idea of being a number 1 pick was very different for him. It came with a lot of pressures. I don't think he or his family were ready. There's a few things, right? He had a little injury in summer league that hurt his ankle, but then he started messing around based on my reporting, kind of had people telling me he would be messing around while shooting a little bit, and that would short circuit. Some sort of short circuiting happens where between that and he messed up his form, and then there might have been some pressures coming from the outside, coming from his mom, who, there's a story that someone told me that his mom basically made him fire his best friend as a manager, made him choose between the manager and her. There's a lot of different winds swirling around. Obviously, Markelle says that he had the shoulder injury. Him and his team are big on that. And just all these different winds swirling where it just became a mess. And, Markelle, he really hasn't recovered since, right? I know he's playing well, but he still can't really shoot. And it's one of the more baffling sagas we've seen in the NBA in years.
No question about that. He lost his jump shot overnight. It's like, you want to hit the rewind button on his career. He could have been really special if he had stayed healthy throughout his whole career. Talking to Yaron Weitzman, the author of Tanking to the Top, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Most Audacious Process in the History of Sports. And Yaron, I'll get you out on this. How did Brian Colangelo, who was still recovering from Burnergate, one of the funniest stories in recent sports history, helped the 76ers trade for Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I love it. It's one of my favorite stories. Brian Colangelo is good friends with Jimmy Butler's agent. Jimmy Butler's agent, a guy named Bernie Lee, lives in Toronto. Brian Colangelo worked in Toronto. After Burnergate, Butler's agent had his wife threw him a surprise 40th birthday party. Colangelo was there. Butler flew into Toronto restaurant. They're sitting around talking, and at one point, this was after Jimmy had kind of decided that Minnesota, he was done with Minnesota. I don't know, that off-season, right, the summer before the off-season where he blew up the Timberwolves training camp. And he turns to Brian Colangelo at one point and says, "Tell me about Philly." And Colangelo tells him, it's a great place. You should, that's where you should be. That's the best place for you. And there's further details there, the back and forth. But I kind of love that story, how I find it fascinating that Brian Colangelo was still selling Philly to somebody even after he was no longer there.
Do you think he gets another opportunity in a couple of years when people forget about Burnaby?
No.
No, he doesn't. Okay.
I don't think
All right,
so.
fair enough.
I don't think so.
I respect it, Yaron. You're the best. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, that was Yaron Weitzman. His book is Tanking to the Top, the Philadelphia 76ers and the Most Audacious Process in the History of Sports. Thanks for listening. Here comes the outro. Thanks for the plug, Jacob from the past. I really do appreciate it. Tomorrow, you're going to get an exclusive interview that I did with Jim Sumner. He wrote a book about Duke, and it is incredibly expansive. This guy knows everything there is to know about Duke basketball. I mean, it is unreal. We talked for about 37 minutes about Duke, and you know what? Let me tell you, he could have gone longer. It was incredibly interesting to hear him speak. If you're a college basketball fan, you'll love this interview. Maybe there will be some more NFL news to talk about tomorrow. Maybe the trifecta. I have no idea. What I do know is that I am Jacob Valk saying that Harvey Haddix could have knocked a gnat off a hitter's nose.